Hello, and welcome back to our Let's Create series where we are working on a Battle Royale game. This is part two. And so last time we made our two places. We had the lobby we created, and then we also created the Battle Island. And then we started working on the layout of the GUI. So we have a couple frames laid out. We have the minimap up at the top right. We have an inventory frame at the bottom right. We have our health and shield frame bottom center. And then we have that combat info frame in the bottom left. And so today we're going to work on making these frames look useful. And so we'll work primarily on the health and shield frame, and then we'll also work on the inventory frame. So let's get into it. I went ahead and created an image asset that we can use for the inventory frame, and I can either try to provide that to you, or if you'd like, you can go to the toolbox and you can search for some kind of images if you'd like. We definitely want to use some images to make it look better. And so what we'll do is we can go right into our inventory frame, and we're going to go ahead and click the plus next to it, and we'll add a UI list layout. And so this is going to give us some cool things about the layout. It's going to go ahead and contract our images for us, which is really nice. So we'll go ahead and use that. We'll use this UI list layout. And then we can add our first, we're going to add an inner frame. This frame is going to contain basically two images inside. It's going to have the background, which is the thing I made, and then the other image is going to be the icon for whatever the player picks up. So if they pick up a health potion or a shield potion or a weapon, those icons will show here. So we need two images in each frame. So let's go ahead and make that first frame. And when we do, we'll notice it's going to be a square because that UI list layout is going to take care of trying to lay this out automatically for us. And so one of the things we want to do is make sure our frame isn't bigger than the parent. So we can scroll down to size, and we can see that it's kind of handled by the list layout, and then we're going to add an aspect ratio to it. So we can do that now. So right next to frame, you can press the plus, and we can type in aspect or ASP, and it should pop up. And this is going to, we'll mess with those properties here in a moment, but so the frame is a square, and now if we scroll down to size, it says it's influenced by this, but that's fine. So we want our X. This doesn't matter because that's what's actually influenced, but our Y is what we can change, and we just want it to be a 1 on scale and offset 0. And so that'll make it as big as, as tall as this parent frame. And so now we're going to rename this frame just inventory slot for now. Oh, and let's add frame at the end. Inventory slot frame. And we're going to have a couple of these. So we might end up naming them slot frame 1, 2, 3, etc. But for now, inventory slot frame. And then let's go ahead and add those two images. So the first one we want, they're both going to be image label. So we added one. We're going to rename this to slot background image. And we'll add another one. So another image label. And this one's going to be item icon image. Item icon. So that'll be, whatever they pick up, that icon is what we'll display here. So both of them, we want their size to be X and Y, scale 1 and offset 0. We just want it to fill the frame. So both of them will do that. I highlighted both images, and then I changed X and Y on the size to 1, 0, 1, 0. And so that'll give us this. And last thing we want to do is change the item icon image. If we scroll down in image, we'll see that it already has an asset, and we want to just clear that. So we'll just delete it. And we want its background color, so scroll all the way up. Background transparency we'll set to 1. Okay, and so now this slot background image, we want its background transparency to also be 1, so we'll change that while we're up here. And then we'll scroll down and we're going to change its asset to this inventory slot. And so whatever it was that you guys downloaded, you can use, or maybe if I can provide this one for you, you can use it. But we also, I'm noticing we have this border around the frame. So we're going to go ahead and we're going to click on our inventory slot frame, and we're going to set border pixel size to 0. And so that should get rid of that little border for us. And then we are ready to duplicate this frame. So if you have all of those, if you don't have all of that done, go ahead and pause the video, rewind. Otherwise, if you're here, we're going to go ahead and duplicate this 4 times. So Control D, interesting, we'll talk about that. So I just duplicated it once, but it didn't go the direction we wanted. And so UI list layout has a property. So if we click on UI list layout, we'll see fill direction is vertical. We actually want that to be horizontal. And then you'll see that it populates to the right, and that's what we want. And so back to it, we'll just continue to duplicate. So there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and they seem to be a little too big. And so we're gonna have to take care of that. But we do see that they shrink as our screen shrinks. So if we check it on mobile, we'll see that it actually fits perfectly. So that's pretty good. But we'll notice that as the screen gets too big, no, it looks okay. Let's see how it goes. But we do need to add some padding. So let's go to that UI list layout. Go up to the top here and we'll see padding. And we can change its offset to something little, like 3 or 5. So I'm just going to hit 5 and press enter. And that should separate these a little and give them some space. Then we'll check mobile one more time just to make sure. And now we see the problem. So 5 could be too big. Let's change it to 3. But the other problem is this should try to fit no matter what. And so we have a couple options. One is to just decrease the height of this parent frame. So we can go to size, and its Y is at 0.12. Let's just make it a 0.1, and we'll see that that kind of takes care of that. And we don't need it to be huge anyway, so that should be okay. And the other thing is, I think I might want it to align to the right. And so we can do that by clicking UI list layout. Horizontal alignment is left. Let's change this to right. And we'll see that it goes to the right, or we can do center and we'll see that it goes to the center. And then if we go ahead and check our mobile again, we'll see that it's perfect. So looks good on mobile, looks good on regular. So that's good. And finally, the last thing we should do is let's go ahead and set the background for the entire inventory frame to its transparency to something like 0.75, I guess. And maybe its background color to black. And let's see how that looks. So I see that our inventory frame, let's just go through because we still have some white here. So one of these frames has a white background. We want to make it a transparent background. So inventory, there it is. So each of these slots, we'll see that their background transparencies are 0. Let's go ahead and change each of those to 1. And it would be faster if you just select all of them and then change it, but that's fine. So we have 5 inventory slots, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Maybe even room for a 6th, but I'm not going to get into that right now because then we'll have a little issue in mobile. We don't really have that kind of room. And so that takes care of our inventory slots. And so now we'll work on the health bar and the shield bar, or yeah, shield bar. So we can go ahead and minimize or collapse this inventory frame, and now we have our health frame. And so health frame, we can go ahead and set its background transparency to 0.75 just to start out with, and set its background color to black, just so it kind of looks like our inventory frame. And then we can start adding a couple things. So our health frame or our health bar is going to be something along these lines. We're either going to use like a solid color image if we want it to look a little better than just a solid color. We could use an image to provide some texture, or we're just going to use like a regular frame and just grow it based on the percentage of their health. And so for the straightforward way, that's what we'll do. So we want to add 2 frames inside here, one for health and one for armor, but we're going to do one at a time. And the reason we're doing one at a time is because we're going to end up duplicating the frame we complete and just duplicate it to use everything we built in that first frame for the second frame. So we'll build out shield, we'll make it look great, and then we'll just duplicate it down and use that for health and change a couple colors and such. So this frame we'll go ahead and rename. So this is a child of health frame, and we'll rename this to shield frame. Okay, and so we want this to be the full width of its parent, and so we can do that by going to size, X, scale is 1, offset is 0. And now we don't actually want its height to be huge. We want it to be just about half. So we'll say 0.5 on scale for Y and 0 on offset, and that'll put it at half. And so this sets us up for everything we're going to put in here for the shield. And so on shield, we might want like an icon. So let's go ahead and add an image label. It doesn't have to be a button, like an image button, because the user's not going to be clicking it. So we've added an image label, and we're just going to call this icon. It's fine, because we're not really going to reference this in code too often, if ever. And so then we'll scroll down, and size X scale will be, mm, hmm. Well, maybe this is another good idea. So we should use that aspect thing again. So let's do that. So let's add the UI aspect ratio constraint, and then this is going to let us so we can set its size Y to 10, and now when this thing shrinks, our icon should shrink, and that's perfect. So we don't want it to be all the way to the left of the frame. We're gonna just bring it in a little bit, and so we could do that by setting its position X. We can just give it like a 5 offset, and that's just gonna move it over to the right just a little. Okay, and so that'll handle that. There's a couple more things we want to do to this icon. One of them being we want its um, uh, image scale type. So scale type from stretch to fit, and that'll make sure our whatever icon we put in there is not going to get distorted. And so we have that. And then let's go ahead and find an icon. So we'll go to View up here at the top and go to and open our toolbox. And let's just look for some kind of shield. And not in, yeah, in images, not in models. You probably have models selected. Let's go to images and we'll search. We want some kind of shield. It doesn't have to be anything crazy because we could end up making our own. Let's see. I'm just going to use this nice little ROBLOX shield here. So I'll copy asset ID is what we need. And then we could go down here into our icon if we have it selected. We have image with a asset, and we can just kind of paste in that ID and press enter, and ROBLOX will do some magic. And bam, now we have a shield. So if you've got your shield in there, we want to set the background to transparency to 1 again because we want to just see through. And we want our border size to be 0. We don't want to see a border around it. And once we end up setting this shield frame background transparency to 1, our shield will just kind of sit there and it'll look really nice. But we're actually not ready to do that yet. So I'm going to set that background transparency to something else, like maybe 0.25. Um, we just need to see it because we're about to add the shield bar, and it would be really nice to be able to see what we're dealing with. So inside this shield frame, we need to add that shield bar, and so I'm going to make the shield bar also um, its own frame. So I'm going to add another frame inside here, and I'm going to rename this to shield bar. Or let's just call it bar frame. But the reason I'm trying to stay away from naming these things specifically shield and health is because we're going to end up copying this over and I don't want to keep changing names. So bar frame is what we'll call it. And we know a couple things. So the one thing we know is that this image is 5 pixels away but then it shares an aspect of the height. And so that's kind of hard to deal with, I think. So let's see what we can do. Well, first of all, we know position on this bar frame could be, let's just say, yeah, that should be okay. I just kind of dragged it over, and we'll see what it kind of looks like with the values that it's given. And so what do we have? We have 0.13, and so if I move this over, let's see, yep, it's doing it. So it's going behind our shield, and we definitely don't want that to happen. So let me try to figure this out. I'll talk through it, and if it ends up taking too long, I will cut this out, but let's see what we can do. So we know this shield, I guess we can make the shield, instead of keeping its aspect, it could just keep its width, and its height can just mold. So let's do that. So we'll get rid of this aspect just for now, and we will make its offset on position is fine. Size for, it's not going to be 100. We're just going to make it like 50. And its Y could be 1. And now we know that our bar needs to be 55 as the offset. So 0, 55 gives us no padding. So actually we should do something like 65 to give it like a 10 pixel padding. And then the rest of this, so the width, the size.x, instead of, oh, we're on the wrong thing. Let's go to bar frame. Size.x is going to be 1. So scale will be 1, and that'll make it too big. And then we're going to go minus 50, or what do we do? 65. And so that'll put it perfectly on the edge. And so we might want to give it that 5 pixels on the right. So we'll do minus 70. So minus 70. That'll give us that 5 pixels on the right, just kind of like a padding. And lastly, we want to give this a background color. And so this background color is going to be like kind of that dark blue that we kind of see in some of these other games. It's kind of like a blue-gray maybe. So let's go something really dark. And so that'll be like an empty shield. And so um, inside of here, we can add anything we want. It could be uh, a text label. It could be anything. It could be just another frame, because this is just going to grow. And so that's what we can do. We can just do a frame. It doesn't really matter, because this is going to be the filled in shield. And so this will be like our nice bright color, and we can set its size.x.scale can start out at 1 is fine, just so we see what it looks like. Or maybe we just do like 0.75, so we have like 3/4 shield, and its offset will be 0. And then on Y, we'll just do a solid 1 on scale and a 0 on offset, and we'll see that we kind of have this health bar now. And finally, we need some way to tell the user how much of this they have. And so we have a couple options. We could put like a text label over the icon that could say like, hey, you have 75 shield. We could put it to the right of that frame to say, hey, you have 75, or we could put it in the middle. The problem with the middle is, I'll show you. Actually, I'll show you what the problem is. So if we go to this frame, the bar frame, that kind of parent on the bar, and we add a text label, I'm just going to make its scale 1 and 0. Oh, let's make sure we have it selected. Scale will be 1 and 0, 1 and 0. And the reason for that is so we can see it just kind of centered, and I'll show you what the problem is. So our background transparency will be 1. Our text color will be, well, I guess white for now. And I'll make text scaled as fine. And bold. We definitely want it to be bold. I don't exactly remember how to do that. Mm, yeah, I don't really remember how to do that right now. We'll come back to it. Anyway, so instead of label, let's put like 75. Okay. And so now this says like, hey, this is how much health you have. This looks really good when our frame goes down to like 0.1 or 0.25, because it's a dark background. But when that frame grows to something like 100, or 0.75, you notice it's a little bit harder to see. And so that it looks okay, but there are things we could do like a text stroke, and that'll let us put like a black border around our text, which is actually kind of neat. So our transparency is on our stroke is 1, meaning it doesn't exist, and we can change it to something like 0.5, and that'll put like that black border around it, which makes it a little easier to see. And the benefit of doing it this way is when that frame gets really small and so it's on the dark blue background, we won't really see the stroke. It'll just look okay, it'll just look white. But now when that blue, light blue background goes behind the word or the numbers, now it's easier to see. And so one thing we do notice is this text needs to be a little bigger. And so we can do that by making its frame a little bigger, so its bounds. So we'll go back to this text label and its position offset. We'll do like you know minus 5 just to move it. Oh, wrong one. Let's do on the Y. So the minus 5 on offset here on its position, which will move it up a little. And then on the size, it'll be 1 with offset 0. We're going to change offset to 10. And that'll make it grow pretty considerably. And now we see that we have a big 75. And so that's starting to look great. And so we'll rename this to, I don't know what we want to call it. Value label, I suppose. Value label. Okay, and that is great for our shield. And now we just need to change this. We'll just duplicate it down. So let's go ahead. Well, we need to um, let's rename our frame. So we have bar frame, which is the background, and then we need like the fill frame. So let's call it fill frame. And then we have the value label, which is like how much you actually have. So this looks good. All right, so now we can duplicate this shield frame. So let's go ahead and duplicate. Oh, it, mine duplicated the value, the label. All right, so let's select the shield frame, duplicate it, and now we have 2. And so we can rename the second one health frame. So let's rename shield frame to health frame. And then we can set its position Y. Right now it's 0, 0. Let's change it to 0.50. And so that'll move it down, to the second half of our little frame here. And now we have a couple things to do. So one, our bar frame background is a dark blue right now. We want it to be a dark green. So under health frame, I clicked bar frame, and now I'm changing its background color to some really dark green. And then our fill frame is a very nice light blue. We want to make it a very nice light green. And then our icon, we want our icon to be some kind of health indicator, like a plus or a heart maybe. So I'm just going to type health and let's see what pops up. So that plus, yeah, that sounds about right. Let's see. I'm thinking a plus is what we're going to get. Ooh, that's a nice heart. I think I'll do this plus. So it's like a white background, red plus. So I'll copy that. And then I'm going to paste that down here into the asset ID. And so we can paste that there. And now we have a shield and a health icon. And now I am gonna do a couple modifications to these icons because I don't like that they fill the frame. I like padding around them. And so what I'll do is I'll select them both and I'm going to change their position. So their position Y is 0, 0, both of them. And so I'm going to change it. I'm going to give offset 5. And that's going to move both of them down. And now their size Y offset is 0. I'm doing minus 10. And what we're doing is we're adding 5 to the top. And then we need to take off that 5 from the bottom, but also take off another 5 from the bottom to give it its padding. So that's where the minus 10 comes from. It's whatever we add to the or take off from the top or add to the top, we need to take off from the bottom twice. So when we do that, now they have this little bit of padding, and I really like the way that looks. And so then what we can do is we can go ahead and change the background transparency to a full 1 on both frames. And we might have a border in there that we're going to need to take care of. I don't see one, so that looks great. All right, and there we go. So now we have the inventory frame here at the bottom right, and it's got its padding, and it's got the background images that I created and that you found, I hope. And then we have our shield and our health frames, and we can start to modify these in code when players like pick something up, if they pick up like a shield potion or anything. And so there we go. So now we're starting to flesh out our UI. Okay, I think that wraps it up for today's video. I hope you enjoyed. Thanks for watching. Like and subscribe and hit that notification bell so you can see when I upload more videos. And we will see you next time.